Hello, gumshoes. I am going to give it a minute just to make sure that the sound is okay, and then we will get started. Okay, all right, the sound is okay. Mods, if there are any issues, please text me, call me if it's an emergency, like if the sound gets bad or anything. One thing I want to clear up is that with A Murderous Heart, I'm not trying to be a news source. So I've seen this trend of people like talking about, the latest filings. I don't really jump into the filings unless something really interesting happens. So I'm not really a knuckle cracker. I know sometimes people can tend to have pretty histrionic responses like, oh no, do you think they're going to dismiss Lori's case? Things like that. And I just kind of take a, we'll see approach. And usually if I weigh in on something, it's going to be in the community tab. That said, there was one thing that I wanted to point out from one of the more recent filings, and that was this, actually, let me back up to the notice of alibi. I talked about this a few lives ago, and it said Lori Vallow was in Hawaii when Tammy Daybell died at the home of Chad Daybell in Salem, Idaho. Defendant was with Melani Boudreau and or Audrey Barattiero. So I thought that was interesting, that they kind of played a little bit of a game here. The defendant was with Melani and or Audrey. Well, I had a confidential source who had told me in 2020 that Lori and Melani were in Hawaii. And then I shared a few lives ago when I talked about this particular filing that I remembered in the first Facebook group I was in. This was back in January 2020, right after the story broke. Someone had said to me that he or she saw me in a picture in Hawaii with Lori and Melani Boudreau. So I was like, okay, well, one, that's ridiculous. But two, okay, well, note to self, Lori and Melani Boudreau were in Hawaii at some point during all of these crimes. And so then when this confidential source told me some months later that Melani and Lori were in Hawaii, that confirmed the Melani piece. However, I always kind of wondered if there was a third person with them because of this one person saying so confidently that she knew, this person was trying to call me out, she knew that I was in Hawaii. So I was really kind of part of this whole thing. So this was curious to me when they released this, but then in the response to let's see what this is called. The response to request for discovery, they circled back on this, but kind of nailed it down a little bit more. And it said, Lori Daybell was in Kauai, Hawaii, when Tammy Daybell died at the home of Chad and Tammy Daybell, blah, blah, blah. Lori Daybell was with Melani Pulowski. It's kind of funny. They spelled her first and last name wrong. But anyway, Melani Pulowski and Audrey Barattiero. So that confirmed, okay, Audrey was with them in Hawaii. So Melani and Lori were in Hawaii at the time that Tammy actually died. But now we know that Audrey was also with them. So a few notes about Audrey is, one, she was the one who Lori sent an SMS message to. This is, we'll hit on this today, but I want to kind of collect all the information about Audrey. Well, not all of it, but quite a bit of it. So Lori sent a message to her right after she left, after Charles, her estranged husband, had been murdered. And so then it says there is no content on the iCloud account, but the communication was captured. So that was interesting that Lori would reach out to Audrey. I think they even had a phone call, but I'm not exactly sure about that. We'll see. But then also, let's see, was this? Yeah. So Audrey lived in I think Independence, Missouri. Yeah. And there was this note that I think this was Lori to Melani Boudreau. Audrey said we could stay with her, but I told her we could get a hotel and she could stay with us. She will take us to all the amazing sites. Another interesting thing about Audrey is that she has a master herbology certification. So, definitely not a smoking gun, but it was a curiosity to me, just given Lori's kind of obsession with malachite. I mean, it's a very tenuous connection at best, but it does make me wonder, if potentially Audrey was a source of information with regard to, those types of organics. And I'll circle back to why I think that, because I don't normally go this far out, I don't know, in the conjecture lane, we'll just say, in these lives. However, there is one very curious fact about Audrey that I will get to in a minute that is why I think it's potentially relevant. Okay, another thing I had found about Audrey, this was on Reddit early on. Someone had asked who she was, and this person, I don't know who this person is, said, the one I found on Facebook appears to be some kind of in-home caregiver currently living in Missouri. Looks like she is, I would say, LDS, not Mormon. It's an offensive term now. Is Facebook friends with Melanie Gibb and Jason Mouse. So I thought that was interesting. But the thing that I think is most interesting about Audrey is that there is an Audrey that was listed in this. This was a list that Chad came up with of trust levels. This was just a little more than a week after Charles was killed. And you see here, there's no, as far as we know, there's no Stacy in this story whose name is spelled with an I-E, but there's also like a Janie, and I think that was supposed to be Janice. So no idea who Talia is. I've never seen that person's name come up, but there is an Audrey who was given a perfect trust score. Raphael, this was a weird inclusion because Raphael is Chad. I mean, it was the name of one of the burner phones, and elsewhere in the FOIA docs, it says Raphael is Chad. There was also a point where Zulema asked Lori if Raphael was with her. She misspelled it. She spelled it with an F, but Lori went on and on about, yes, he's always with me. It's just like in percentages. That's the only thing that changes. So Raphael is Chad. So Chad gave himself 100% trust rating. But then there's an Audrey, and there's only one Audrey we know of in this story, and that's Audrey Barattiero. And if this is indeed the same Audrey, she was given a perfect trust score, even better than Melanie Gibb, who was there, insisted on being at Lori's house just 2 days before Charles was murdered. Even Zulema, who would have had their baby, was given a 96, so she was 1 point less than Melanie Gibb. But even Al, who murdered allegedly for Lori and repeatedly was and had just murdered Charles the week before, he was only given a trust rating of 94. So that's why I have so many questions about Audrey and her potential involvement, because the only thing that I can think of that would make them perfectly confident that there was absolutely no chance of her turning on them is if she shared some kind of complicity. So anyway, your mileage may vary. I just thought that was really interesting. Okay, so let's get to the agenda. I had this all pulled up, and then I accidentally closed out of Chrome. Okay, I'm going to zoom in a little bit for people who are on mobile devices. Oops. Now, with 7/11, just like with July 10th, okay, whoops, I think I passed it. There were quite a few details that were given timestamps. So what I did was I collected all of the details that had a timestamp in one entry. And because I think it just communicates just the level of mania that these people were dealing with, and just the velocity of some of these events. Okay, so for anyone who has followed the story at all, July 11th was the day that Charles was shot and killed by Alex Cox. So the day started early, 6:06 a.m. This is Phoenix time. Chad sent Lori a text message that was later deleted. 6:12, Lori sent Chad a text message that was later deleted. 7:01, so this is leading up to the time that Charles got there, which was 7:35. 7:01, Lori texts Chad. 7:33, Lori texts Chad again. And all of these messages were deleted. 7:35, Charles arrived at Lori's home and texted Lori's brother, Adam Cox, to tell him Alex was there. Adam told Charles that Lori and Alex were planning something, and Charles replied, absolutely. Let's just jump right to that. 7:35 to 7:37. Charles and Adam exchanged these text messages. Charles, Alice here. Adam, at Lori's, I think this was supposed to be a question. Adam, really? I wonder why he never called me back. There's Adam, just always thinking of Adam. Adam, they are planning something. Charles, absolutely. Adam, I was supposed to spend the night at his house last night. She probably blocked that. Now, the one thing I will note about this, as I tend to do, is that what we'll see, what we already know from the last live, that according to Summer, Zac was going to be house sitting for her and dog sitting. So Summer took off for New York the morning of July 11th, conveniently enough. This is a solid Cox family pattern. But to be fair, we don't know when she booked that flight. But Adam makes the point that he was supposed to spend the night at Alex's, but Zac would have been staying at Summer's. And keep in mind, Zac lived in the Phoenix area. He had been living with Lori and Charles and then moved to Melanie and Brandon's place after the big blow up. So in February, or possibly January, before Charles got home. We're not exactly sure, but we know that he moved over to Melanie and Brandon's. And so they didn't live near each other. So, the parent in me reads this and is like, wait a minute. So he doesn't get to see his son very much. And his son is staying at Summer's, but Adam was trying to hook up with Alex and stay there. And then when Alex just didn't reply to any more of his calls or texts, then he ended up staying with his parents, so Barry and Janice, instead of at Summer's with Zac. So I always thought that was just a curious thing. Clearly they would have had the house to themselves, so why wouldn't he stay with his son? So anyway, Charles, I feel like in this, he's expressing frustration. Charles, I believe his anxiety level would have been absolutely peaked when he saw when he saw Alex's truck there. So he just replies to Adam, what you do is up to you. And then these two text messages, the police report notes, Adam sent to Charles at 7:37, but Charles didn't see, he never saw these last two texts. They weren't read until 12:13 p.m. when Charles was dead and Lori was in control of his phone. So Adam said, I'm going to put the pressure to have him come get me right now. See what he says. And then Adam replied probably to this message here. Okay, just 1 second. Okay, 7:49. Charles' cell phone left the home. Now, Chandler uses this timestamp as a proxy for the approximate time Charles was shot. From the indictment, it said, based on this timeline, Charles would have laid, I just threw in a sick there because technically it's lain, but anyway, dead or dying for approximately 43 minutes before Alex called 911. And it's hard to gloss over that. 43 minutes. To me, this says a couple things. That one, Charles most likely he didn't die quickly. But also, I believe that Alex was cleaning up, because when you see the pictures from the crime scene that day, there was no blood anywhere. It wasn't the only blood in the entire house that you can see, and these were high resolution images. I did a whole live about this where I really took a deep dive into those pictures, it's the video, I think, why TF wasn't Alex Cox arrested, but the only blood that you can see in this high resolution image, which means like you can zoom way in because there are a lot of pixels in these images, the only blood was a few drops around an unspent round or bullet that was in the middle of the room. So ostensibly this would have been the bullet that went through his shoulder and scarred the wood flooring, and then it was lying like maybe 3 to 5 feet to the right of Charles' body. If you're standing at Charles' feet looking on at his body, the unspent round was maybe 3 to 4 or 5 feet to his right. But there was a little bit of blood around that bullet, and if someone reminds me, I will post the picture in the community tab. Hopefully YouTube doesn't have a problem with it, but ostensibly this would have rolled, I guess, over there, but then there would have been a trail of blood, and there wasn't any. There was a little bit of blood just around the bullet. Even the bullet that went into the baseboard, there was no blood. Now, supposedly this was supposed to be the bullet that like ripped through Charles' chest, and so there should have been blood spatter all over, and there wasn't. So I believe that Alex was also cleaning up. Okay, 7:49. So this is same time. Adam sends Charles a text message. Again, this one wasn't read until 12:13 by Lori. And he said, me and it was redacted, but Zach's name fit in there. So me and Zac are going to the stake center tonight at 8 to play basketball. Holmes, he was the stake president, is always there either playing ball or interviewing people. I will try to catch him to have a conversation with my old friend. So Charles was relying on Adam to have Holmes attend this intervention that they were planning to have with Lori. So Holmes and the other guy whose name I can't think of at the time, right at this time. But anyway, so Adam had told Charles that he was going to meet up with Holmes, but then he told Detective Moffat later he wasn't able to do that. And anyway, so also at 7:49, Lori sent Melanie a text message that was later deleted. So keep in mind, Lori is driving. She has Tylee and JJ with her. She has just left the scene of this crime. And anyway, so she sends Melanie a text before she does anything with her phone. 7:52, Alex called Lori and they speak on the phone for 49 seconds. Now, also, Alex told Chandler, Detective Moffat, that he didn't call Lori. I think that this is an important point, so we'll open this up. And you'll also see him hesitate.
When did you realize Lori had gone? Did you call her?
No.
Okay.
So Moffat asked him, when did you realize Lori had gone? Did you call her? And Alex hesitates and then says no. But he knew, Detective Moffat knew within a couple days that Alex had called Lori. So he knew that Alex had lied. Okay, 7:52 to 8:06. Lori and Melanie exchanged 4 text messages, which were later deleted. 7:55, Lori arrives at the Burger King with Tylee and JJ at Gilbert Road and whatever that's called. She is captured on the drive-through video. You can click through to this for more details if you would like. 8:06, Alex calls Lori again, and they speak on the phone for 56 seconds. Again, Alex had told Moffat he didn't call her. 8:17, Lori arrives at Walgreens on Cooper Road in Gilbert, where she purchases 2 pairs of sandals with cash. Tylee and JJ didn't go into the store with her. Most likely they were eating and Tylee was staying with JJ. Now, I make the point, Lori must have been pretty desperate for new flip-flops since she prioritized this over returning to the scenes, and the ones she purchased are noticeably too small. So I zoomed in on her flip-flops, and you can see here her toes are hanging over the flip-flops, and it's not like she's just pushing forward. Her heel lines up with the back of the flip-flop, but her toes are hanging over. So I strongly suspect that there was blood on their sandals. This was just a neighbor who had come over. Okay, 8:17, Lori sends an SMS message to her friend Audrey, which is later deleted. We talked about that. 8:24, Lori drops JJ off at school. 8:32, Alex calls 911. 8:43, Alex is questioned by Chandler Police outside the home. And I just captured, you can click through to that. But if you look at the time, the date stamp, I'll just hit play, but turn the volume down. But the timestamp is at the bottom here, but it's in UTC time. So if you convert it to Chandler time, I think it was, or Arizona time, I think it was like, I think I had to subtract 7. You'll be able to see the timestamps for the entire video. Okay, at 8:46, a Chandler PD detective dismisses a neighbor who came forward as a witness. Now, I thought this was interesting. I'll go ahead and pull this up.
Oops. Talking in between or what? Who are you? Who are you? No, just go back. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Alex is absolutely ridiculous, but he was talking to Alex, and then this neighbor walks up here, and the detective asks who he is. He says a neighbor, and then he just dismisses him, and thanks him but dismisses him. And then Alex, stupid head, he also thanked him, like, shut up, Alex. But the thing that's interesting is that, in an infuriating kind of way, is that according to the police report, Chandler never circled back with that neighbor. In fact, they never interviewed any neighbors. So unless that particular page of the police report is heavily redacted, which there would be no reason for it to be, I searched the entire police report for the word neighbor, and you don't see anything come up. I also searched for like a ring to see if they contacted any neighbors about Ring, doorbell cam footage or anything. Nothing. No, in the investigation into the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux, they canvassed the entire neighborhood. Well, not the entire neighborhood, but they canvassed the area around Brandon's rental home, and they asked about Ring doorbell footage. And so they interviewed all of these neighbors. A couple different neighbors saw Alex in the Jeep, sitting there with the car idling and stuff. But you don't see any evidence in the Chandler police report that they talked to a single neighbor. So, which is, in my opinion, if that's accurate, again, they didn't redact references to neighbors in the Gilbert police report, so it really wouldn't make sense to me that, aside from names, of course, but it wouldn't make sense that they would redact that. But anyway, okay, 8:48. Lori and Tylee arrived back to the home after stopping at Burger King, dropping JJ off at school, and stopping at Walgreens for new flip-flops. 8:58, Chandler police detective walks over and interviews Lori and Tylee at the scene. Okay, so now this was interesting. So 7:34 p.m. that night, this was the evening that the evening that Charles was murdered. Chad called the Valley of the Sun mortuary where Charles Vallow's body was being held to get an estimate for a cremation. So originally, this call was reported as having happened the next day on July 12th, but whoever was writing up the police report for that section didn't realize the time was in UTC. And so when you subtracted, I think it's 7 hours to get to Arizona time, it was actually that same day. So I'm not going to pull up the whole thing. If you want to see the transcript, it's here. There are more details here and here. I did make a few notes. This call was made from his Boyd Dial burner phone. I talked about the Boyd Dial burner phone last live, and even a potential source for the name Boyd Dial. I already made that point here. Chad told the rep his name was Chad Dabal, Dabal, and he was calling about the cremation of his uncle, John Myron Dabal, and the estimate he got was $1,880. I just derived at that by adding up all of the individual elements. Also, Chad told the rep that he lived in Iowa. I believe that's because the area code for his burner phone was 515, which is an Iowa area code. He also said his uncle died in a hospital in Chandler. And when the rep asked his number, he didn't know his number because it was a burner phone, and he had to look it up, and he was pretty sheepish and embarrassed about that. Okay, so this is still the same day, 10:19. Summer texted Alex to ask if anything has happened yet. So it says here on July 11th, 2019, that morning before she left, she sent Alex a text message stating, "On the plane, anything yet?" And Alex didn't respond. And then she would send another text to Alex when she arrived in New York around 10:19 p.m. She asked Alex if anything had happened yet, as she was concerned that Adam and Charles were going to do something. Alex responded by telling Summer to have fun and no worries. And it wasn't until the next day that Summer called Alex, and she was informed that Charles was killed. Summer stated that she felt that Alex and Lori were trying to protect her, so she didn't worry while she was on her trip. Whatever. Okay. 11:31 that night. Zulema texted Lori a bizarre message about Charles. She had said, as I was working on Hiplos today in the temple, I was told, quote, he will be taken as is. IDK, what that means. Then I was shown to only put light, the brightest light, from the top and the bottom at the same time, meeting in the middle. So I've been doing that all day. Okay. All right. A few notes I will hit on. Most of the people covering or following this case probably already know this, but here Alex was staying at the house where Charles was shot, despite living about only 23 miles away. Actually, I know it was 23 miles because I have his address at that time. Also, Colby claimed that the day Charles was shot, that his mom told him he had died of a heart attack. When he got to the house, he discovered his stepdad had been shot by his uncle. Charles was also scheduled to look at the apartments with the landlord sometime after dropping JJ off at school. This is based on a post that the landlord had posted in a private Facebook group. So I don't post that. I know that East Idaho News has a screenshot of it. Okay. Also, Alex says Charles attacked him with a baseball bat, but only had trace amounts of blood on a napkin that he dabs the back of his head with. And also, Charles' fingerprints were not found on the bat. So, according to Tylee's story, Charles grabbed like the fat part of the bat when she held the bat out. So, his fingerprints should have been on that bat, but the results came back. They said inconclusive, but they only tested the bat for Charles, Lori, and Alex's prints, not Tylee's, which I thought was kind of curious. But it's like they just had total confidence in this claim that Tylee was the one who brought the bat out. Okay, let's see. Oh, also, Alex said that Lori, Tylee, and JJ left before the shooting, but Lori said that she was at home. Lori and Tylee both actually said that they were at home when Charles was shot. So that was a major issue in the story. I'm not going to go through all of these. Moffat described the ride in the police car with Lori, Alex, and Tylee as, quote, straight up bizarre. He added it was the weirdest ride I've ever had with three strangers. He described Lori as happy-go-lucky and said she was smiling and nonchalant. Quote, you would have thought we just recovered their stolen vehicle. And so you can click through to that. It's just a lot of the Dateline snippets I had to make video snippets from because they were taken down. Okay, Melanie Gibbs said Alex told her that Hiplos, that was the name they gave Charles, had the power of 1,000 men. We'll open that up. Okay.
So a particular body can only be consumed by one dark spirit at a time.
Well, in the beginning, so it was Ned only could be in there, or at least that was my understanding, and then he would leave in this other one. But Hiplos was different because Hiplos was like a combination of evil spirits combining stuff that they weren't. So, okay, in our religion, we believe that premortally, you have people that came down to the planet and became us, right? We're now who we were spiritually, we're now here. But there was a third of that never came down here and never got bodies. They were saying that would never happen, that there would only be somebody that had lived before, like a Ned who lived on the earth and the Holy Spirit went in him. But they were saying, oh no, Satan's getting more trickier. His tactics are getting better and better. They kept saying that he'd get better and better. That was Chad's probably reasoning why things didn't work out the way he thought they always would. It was his way. That's how I started figuring Chad out. He'd say, oh, that didn't happen. Oh, well, it's because of that. It's always, oh, it's because of that. So now there's Hiplos. Why wasn't Charles dying? They thought they had all these powers. Oh, they all would come up with another reason why they're getting smarter. So there's, and at least I remember Alex saying something about, it was like 1,000 of them, or somebody said it. It's like 1,000 of them, or felt like it. So it was a combination of all these entities that never came through, so they took over his mind. So that's what they were saying.
So Alex specifically told you he was so strong during this fight that it felt like there was 1,000.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality is, if Alex had been struck in the head with the strength of one man, especially Charles, he would have been knocked into his next probation. So to say, like, you know, Charles had the strength of 1,000 men or evil entities, it was absolutely ridiculous. Excuse me. Okay, also, I threw this out on the community tab, but Alex couldn't even say for sure that Charles hit him with a bat. So there was this note, a really odd note in the police report. It said, Alex said when he got back up, Charles hit him in the back of the head, but added he did not know if it was with the bat or not, but he assumed it was because he had the bat. So, I mean, that's just bizarre, but it just sounds like they really didn't have their story down ahead of time. Okay. In my opinion, Zulema's reference to Charles being taken as he is indicates she knew the plan to murder him. Again, my opinion. Also, she and Chad both expressed relief that Charles is dead. We'll see that. Chandler Police Detective Yinklin and Moffat expressed surprise that Lori and Alex never called them to check in on the investigation. I thought this was a curious thing, so I'll play this.
When we were finished with the search warrant and we left, that's the last contact that we've ever had with them. Yeah. They've never called, asked questions.
I mean, what do you think they're going to do? Like, criminals don't call. They don't check in to see how the investigation is going. So I just thought it was bizarre that they, almost seemed like their feelings are hurt. Like, they never called. They never checked in. Okay. I did derive the times by subtracting 7 hours. Okay. And also, I addressed some of the more egregious contradictions in Lori, Alex, and Tylee's interviews in a live I did on my Analytics channel in September 2020. This link actually takes you to that part of the video, so it doesn't take you to the beginning, but I did a presentation that pretty clearly addressed the contradictions by showing like each contradiction had its own slide, and I would show, okay, this was Lori's claim, this was Alex's claim, this was Tylee's claim, and there are some really egregious contradictions. But also, when Detective Yinklin approached the car, this was when they had asked Lori and Alex to come back to the house to do a walkthrough of the events of that day. Alex, and they were at Alex's house when they got the call. So then that's when they went by the, what someone said was the business complex that Summer's husband worked in. So we know from the GPS coordinates that they stopped by this. It was a medical complex, and Summer's husband is a chiropractor there, according to one person who watched the live and brought this up. I think I did verify that. But anyway, they stop by that medical complex, then they go back to the house. So Chandler wanted both of them to walk through their recollection of the events of that day. But then Lori said, hey, I need to go pick up my son. And they just let her go. But before letting her go, Detective Yinklin came up to their car and said, hey, we can't find Charles' cell phone. Tylee hands Detective Younglin was the detective who interviewed both Lori and Tylee, who's the female detective. So Tylee hands her Charles' cell phone. Detective Younglin asks what the passcode was, and they both knew the passcode, although Lori later said one of her angels told her what it was. It was 1,000. But then did her angel also tell Tylee? I mean, clearly they just knew Charles' passcode. But then Lori told her that when she got in Charles' rental car, they found the phone. And Detective Younglin accepted that as a plausible story. However, it makes no sense with the testimony that Lori had given Detective Younglin earlier that morning, that this whole fight erupted inside the house over Charles' cell phone. And Charles never left after this fight. This is when he was shot. So the only way his cell phone could have gotten back into his rental car would have been for Lori, Tylee, or JJ to bring it into the car. I mean, obviously it was Lori. Lori was the one in control of Charles' cell phone. I'm just making the point that it's not stated who actually carried it out because they don't know. But one of them had to have carried the cell phone into the car. So that was another red flag that Detective Younglin missed. Okay. We know that Adam and Charles had planned to meet up after Charles dropped JJ Vallow off at school. According to Charles' date from the night before, her name was Nancy Jo. It says here, Nancy Jo said Charles and Adam were supposed to meet on 7/11. So she had gone out with Charles the night before, so the 10th. After Charles dropped JJ off at school to discuss how to confront Lori about her beliefs that she was a god and here to usher in the second coming of Christ. Nancy Jo said Charles and Adam wanted to get Lori help for those behaviors. So kind of tuck that away, that according to Nancy Jo, Charles and Adam were supposed to meet up. Okay, we already talked about this. Summer flew to New York and texted Alex twice during the day asking for updates. And I make the point, the fact that Summer told Lori in a text just 2 days before Charles was murdered, it, quote, if that's the case, I will kill him myself, multiple exclamation marks, makes it highly unlikely that Summer was unaware of the plan to murder Charles, in my opinion. Okay. The pool party. Neighbors reported that the family hosted a pool party at the house where Charles Vallow was shot the day of the shooting. They report there are lots of people and loud music. One is, I think this was an East Idaho News report. You can check that out. But this one was an interview of one of the neighbors.
The morning it happened, we woke up. I woke up, it was a break from school, so I woke up at noon-ish, and I turned on the TV, and I was like, oh my gosh, what happened? That's my house, on the news. What? So I figured out the story, everything, and then later that night, I remember going outside in my backyard to let my dog out or something, and all of a sudden I just hear, music playing, people splashing in the pool. I was like, what the heck? I totally did not report it, though, because I don't know, I told my parents, I was like, do you hear what's going on over there? But, yeah.
So that was the night that Charles Vallow was shot, and all the fire trucks and ambulances and everything were here. They were in the backyard having a party, huh?
Yeah,
so,
unfortunately.
Okay.
Sophomore.
So the only one we know was at that pool party was Colby. He had said in an interview, I think it was his interview with Justin Lum, if he had known that Charles was shot, he wouldn't have gone over to the house. Okay. Okay, so July 11th through the 13th. I make the point here because of the number of contradictions between Nicole Cox, who was married to Adam Cox at the time. They're no longer married. So between Nicole and Zac Cox, Adam and Nicole's son, regarding their activities and travels between July 11th and the 13th, I actually pulled all of their details into a table instead of dispersing them throughout the timeline, because otherwise I just find it too difficult to follow. So I originally had them in the timeline where they belonged on each day, but you really couldn't capture just how bizarre about the differences were between their accounts. So a little bit of background. Neither Nicole nor Adam nor Zac, for that matter, none of them reached out to law enforcement after Charles was killed. Not even after they found out that Charles was killed. So then, sometime in August, Nicole reached out to Detective Moffat, sent him an email. This was shortly after there was some reference to Detective Moffat questioning how reliable or trustworthy Adam Cox was. And so then Nicole reaches out to Detective Moffat. Then Detective Moffat called Adam the next day. So this was almost a month, or right around a month after Charles had been murdered. So I'll go through them by day. So according to Nicole, the day Charles was shot, Adam and Zac drive to Tucson. And Adam reportedly tells Nicole, "I'm worried sick. I think Alex and Lori did something to Charles." So now my first red flag right here. You're worried sick. You think that Alex and Lori did something to Charles. Why did you go radio silent? Yeah. So, and why not reach out to law enforcement, order a welfare check, do something, anything. Even after they found out that there was an investigation, that they found out that Charles had been shot by Alex, they did nothing for a month, right around a month. Okay, so that was Nicole's story. Zac's story was Zac went to work, Adam went out to eat with his parents, and then Adam and Zac played basketball. And that was the plan that Adam had told Charles right when Charles was shot. Okay, the next day, this is Friday. According to Nicole, Adam and Zac are still in Tucson. And you can feel free to obviously check these out. I cite every source. So source one, this is Nicole's email, I think. Yeah, so this was Nicole's email. Source two is, this is where Zac talks about going to Tucson. Okay, so on the 12th, on Friday, according to Nicole, Adam and Zac are still in Tucson. I italicize anything that is kind of like a key difference. According to Zac, Adam and Zac go to see Zac's second cousins after Zac got off work. So they're just kind of like going about life as usual, like meeting up with family. And then Zac said he texted Colby to see if he wanted to go play basketball, got no response. Adam texted Alex to see if he wanted to go to the comedy club and got no response. This one, I'm kind of assuming that was Adam, because I think Zac said like we texted Alex, and they probably didn't both send a text to Alex. So one of them texted Alex to see if he wanted to go to the comedy club and got no response. Okay, so now this is Saturday. According to Nicole, Adam's friend, Dr. Lane, finds out Charles is shot by doing a Google search. So this was 2 days after Charles was shot, and and they're talking about it, and Adam and Nicole's friend is like, hey, you know what? Why don't we just look it up on Google? Adam tells Nicole he knows it was murder, but never calls police. And according to Nicole, Adam and Zac returned to Phoenix. But according to Zac, this is the day that Adam and Zac drive to Tucson. And this part is the same. Adam's friend finds out Charles is shot by doing a Google search. According to one of my confidential sources, Adam left on the 14th. So Adam left and went back to Kansas. So, I just make the point here. Some inconsistencies are expected. Memories aren't exact. However, the discrepancies between their stories indicate deception on one or both of their parts, in my opinion. So, okay. All right, we already talked about that. The Summer called Alex and finds out Charles had been killed. Also on the 12th, Chad performed searches, that's written awkwardly. Search Google for, quote, Charles Vallow death Chandler, starting at 3:55 a.m. That was Mountain Daylight Time, so that was actually Idaho time, not Arizona time. So, he's clearly obsessing. He's up in the middle of the night searching to see if the story is live anywhere. Then he visits multiple news articles about the death, and I list the news articles. Okay, also on the 12th, Zulema texted Julie Clement. I've already talked about Julie Clement. She is a friend of Zulema. Zulema kept trying to advocate for her being added to the group, and Lori and Chad just never kind of picked up what she was putting down, and so anyway, but Zulema was still close to her. So she texts Julie and describes Charles' murder as a, quote, Nephi and Laban ending, and expresses relief that Charles is dead. She wrote, oh, okay, Hiplos is gone. It was a Nephi and Laban ending. I will tell you more when I see you in person or when you see Lori in person. I'm leaving for Chile on Monday for 2 weeks. This, I think, was, let's see. Maybe it was source one. We don't know what Julie said, but she said something, because then Zulema said to her, right, I'm just happy it's over. And I make the point, these redaction fill-ins are actually verified, because the entire affidavit of probable cause was left unredacted in the police report. Okay, so similarly to another entry, I originally had Lori's text exchanges with one of Charles' sons spread out throughout the timeline, but I felt it was best just to to maintain the continuity of their exchange. I put them all together in one entry here. Okay, Lori has a bizarre text exchange with one of her stepsons, and you can see the entire text exchange here. I'm not going to read it from here, because I do add in some notes about what else was happening at this time, and I don't want to forget those. Okay. Lori said, now keep in mind, this was the next day, and Charles had been dead for more than 30 hours at the time that she texted. Hi boys, I have very sad news. Your dad passed away yesterday. I'm working on making arrangements, and I'll keep you informed with what's going on. I'm still not sure how to handle things. Just want you to know that I love you, and did your dad. I think this was supposed to be, and so did your dad. Now, there's this note that Lori added Lori to the conversation and removed Lolo from the conversation after sending the initial text. So I think she sent out this text and was like, oh, wrong phone, and removed one of, you see here, Lori added Lori to the conversation. Lori removed Lolo from the conversation. So, and this was like right after sending this text. So that's very, very weird. The stepson, we don't know which of the sons. I have a good idea because only one son has really been involved. But I just keep it anonymous. Stepson, Lori, what happened? And I keep all of the punctuation the way it was in the text messages. I just tried to keep everything as close to or as like perfectly expressed as it was. So sometimes there are typos and all kinds of things, wrong punctuation, things like that. I mean, these are text messages. So, Lori, we are still waiting for the ME report. I'll let you know more when I can. I mean, it's utterly bizarre. Like, they don't need an ME report to know that Charles died of a gunshot wound. Stepson, where is he and what happened? Lori, I'll call you when I can, bub. He is here in Arizona. Stepson, where in Arizona? Stepson, when did all this happen? Stepson, how's JJ doing? That was touching. Also, what funeral is he at? So he's sending these kind of rapid fire because, he's trying to process what she had just told him. And then he says, Lori, I'm sure that's an expletive, happened. You can't just tell us our dad died and disappear. You're not too busy to just let us know and disappear. Then again, Lori, it's been 3 hours. You're not that busy. I don't care what you're doing. And then Lori replies, I'm sorry you are so upset. I am upset too. I'm trying to get JJ ready for bed. I'm waiting to hear back from the medical examiner to make sense out of all this myself. Please be patient with me. It's a crushing situation all around. I'm still trying to process it too and what it means for JJ. I mean, this is just absolutely bizarre. It's not a crushing situation for you. You don't need to wait to hear back from the medical examiner to make sense out of what happened. She knew exactly what had happened. And she knows exactly what it means for JJ. It means JJ would grow up without a father. But as it turns out, not for very long, only 2.5 months. Stepson, when and where is the funeral? How did all this happen? Stepson, I want an explanation. So now one thing we know is that Charles' ex-wife, Cheryl Wheeler, who is obviously this stepson's mother, found out sometime that day that Charles had been shot by Alex Cox. I don't know why I have an apostrophe there. And she told East Idaho News, I checked the medical examiner's webpage and found Charles had been killed the day before, and they had classified it as a homicide. We further Googled and saw all the news reports out of Chandler. We found out that Alex had shot him. Now, Charles' autopsy actually wasn't performed until the next day, so she got that one little detail wrong. But several websites had reported Charles' death as a homicide on July 11th, including the Chandler PD website, Fox 10, and AZ Central. Now, one thing that I found interesting was on the Chandler website here. Let's see here. Yeah, it doesn't name Alex Cox as the shooter. It just says Vallow's brother-in-law, so this is Charles Vallow's brother-in-law, was also in the residence, fearing the argument would elevate to a physical altercation between Vallow and his estranged wife. Vallow's brother-in-law intervened on behalf of his sister. Soon Vallow and his brother-in-law were in a physical fight. So when the other stories reported it, apparently that's all the information that they had, because you see here, Vallow's brother-in-law, who was also in the home, yada, yada. So I don't know, maybe that's standard protocol. I just thought it was very odd that Chandler would hold back Alex Cox's name. Okay, so, but just for perspective, at some time during the day, the 12th, the stepson did find out that Charles had been shot by Alex, because that was the detail in there. And obviously Cheryl would have known, okay, brother-in-law, that would have been Alex. You know, he was known as the family hitman. But still, he was well within his right to question Lori, because I think they wanted to see at what point is Lori going to tell them what had actually happened to Charles. So this is the 13th, the next day. The stepson sent a question mark, then he sent another one. You know, this is sometime during the day. And then Lori said, I'm still working on arrangements and sorting things out the best I can. I'll let you know when I know. Stepson, why aren't you telling me what happened? I've asked numerous times. Just tell me. And then another question mark. This is the day, as I mentioned, Charles' autopsy was actually performed. Then on the 14th, he sent another question mark. Then sometime that day, Lori left a voicemail inviting him to talk.
I just wanted to talk to you. Hello. I just wanted to talk to you and see how you're doing. And JJ wants to say hi. So just give me a call back and maybe we can talk for a few minutes. I love you. Bye. Hello. I just wanted to talk to you.
It cuts off in the beginning, but she says it's Lolo. And I include the transcript here. The stepson said he called her back, but she didn't answer, and noted this was the last time he received a call from Lori. Then on the 15th, he texted again. Okay, Lori, it's been 3 days. You let us know our father passed away over a text message. 3 days, and we haven't heard from anyone. The only information we have is that one text from you saying he passed away. You disappeared after that. We need any information you have. What happened? When did it happen? How did it happen? Where is he now? Are there any funeral plans? And they redacted the name, and I'm sure it was his brother, and I be a part of it. We talked to him all the time, and now he's gone. He was our dad, and we loved him very much. We deserve answers. Also, why have you been the only one to contact us? We haven't heard from Colby or Tylee. I called Colby recently too. And he didn't answer. Is JJ safe? And what does he know? And then he said, I need to be kept in the loop about all this. This isn't a nonchalant topic you can just throw a text at and be done with it. Lori. She was most likely saying his name. These are your dad's wishes. He and I discussed this a lot over the years we have been together. My plan is to have him cremated as he wished, and then take all 5 of you kids to Hawaii to spread his ashes. He did not want a funeral. Oh, that's terribly convenient. She also didn't have one for Joe. He wants a celebration of his life. I've been overwhelmed, but I am sick. Now, I do think that, I might be way out in right field on this, but I do think, especially given some of her claims about being a god, I just thought that this was curious that she would capitalize am. It could have been a text message, but like a typo, but typically, like, your phone won't capitalize a word like am in the middle of the sentence. Who knows? But anyway, but I am like that. There's a biblical reference with I think Moses, and Moses said, "Who shall I say sent me?" And God replied, "Tell them I am sent you." So anyway, who knows? But I am going to try to start these arrangements today. JJ is doing good, but he does not know his daddy is gone. It's so tough because he really doesn't understand. He says daddy is in California working. I know how much he loves you boys and always has. I have a lot of things to do with the business and contacting people, and it's still also difficult. So, I mean, this is such a Cox thing. Like, this is so difficult for me. Today, I'm trying to put up a memorial page on the funeral home website. I'll send the link to you when I have it. I love you, and so does your dad. So, I mean, she kind of pulls a Melanie Boudreau here. Like, this is just like diarrhea of the mouth, but she never tells him what he's actually asking. What happened? Okay, also, I think it's notable that this was, so on the day that that the stepson said, hey, you know what, why have I only heard from you? Why haven't I heard from Colby or Tylee? And he mentioned that he tried to call Colby and Colby didn't pick up. The 15th was the same day that Lori and Colby flew to Houston and collected a bunch of Charles' belongings. So for all we know, like, Colby could have been flying there or even at the house and collecting Charles, his more valuable belongings. Okay, next day, keep in mind, Lori and Colby are still at Charles' house. They left sometime the 16th. The stepson said, I appreciate this information, but I will ask these, this was supposed to be questions, again, because I still haven't been given an answer. What happened? When did it happen? How did it happen? Where is he now? Is there a funeral? When is it? Who have you told about his death? Give me all the information you have, please. Or give me all the information you have, please. My brother and I deserve to know. She doesn't reply. So that's the 16th. Then 4 days later, on the 20th, the stepson sends her another text. Well, if you won't answer those questions, can we please have his watches and other stuff he always talked about and had around? Lori replies, of course, so-and-so. Send me the address you want me to send you stuff to. Kay is supposed to clean out the Houston house. I told her to let you and, sure, his brother, have whatever you want first. Then she can give I think this was supposed to be rest. I don't know, give something, or give away the rest. I know that he wanted you to have all that you want. So I make the point. I mean, this last text was disingenuous because she and Colby had already pillaged Charles' house. So what they did was they collected up a whole bunch of Charles' stuff, put it in Charles' truck, and left it at the airport and gave Alex the keys, flew Alex out to Houston to pick up the truck and deliver to Lori and Colby the valuables. So for her to be like, oh, absolutely, you take whatever you want first, because, you know, that's what your dad, he would have wanted you to have all that you want. It's pretty disgusting. So one of Charles' sons had told East Idaho News, my dad had a collection of watches, very fancy watches. This I can confirm. He always had really nice, like I remember him, the last time I saw him, he had a Rolex. He wore a nice watch. I'm pretty sure it was a Rolex. It was a very nice watch, but he wore nice watches for years and years. So I thought she was going to send me some of, I think that was supposed to be them. The package arrived, and inside were 2 cheap Timex watches you'd find at CVS. Anything that was worth money, we didn't get. I'm assuming she sold everything else. So we don't know what happened to all those. The only thing we know of is that Colby had kept Charles' iMac. So he had told detectives that Lori had it wiped first, and then he got the iMac. Okay. According to Zulema, Lori and Alex invite her over and tell her about how Charles died. Alex tells her that he was not affected by his death as he killed a zombie and not Charles. Let's see. Yeah, you can confirm that. Also on the 12th, Lori and Chad's friend, Jason Mel, publishes a bizarre Facebook post about wanting to buy a used Jeep. I'm just going to pull this up. Is it related? Maybe, maybe not. But at minimum, it seems like Jason Mel was in the know and was playing like these, what appear to be passive-aggressive games. So he had this public Facebook post looking to buy a used Jeep 4-door Wrangler. Anyone know a guy? So the day before, Charles had been killed, and he owned a Jeep Wrangler, a 4-door Jeep Wrangler. So it is weird that he would even say, anyone know a guy? You know, like, I mean, why not just say, I'm looking to buy a Jeep? Or better yet, just go to Facebook Marketplace or, Craigslist or anywhere other than, let me just make this public announcement that I'm looking to buy a Jeep. Does anyone know a guy? It is very weird. Okay. This is also the same day. The autopsy is performed on Charles. Then also Chad first uses the burner phone he activated on October 31st under the pseudonym Boyd Dow. Actually, I need to... no, I don't think that was in the police report, but that's not accurate because he used the Boyd dial phone, unless he had multiple phones. But it says here, Chad then started to utilize the phone on 7/13. And this is all about the Boyd dial account. But we know that when he called the funeral home, that he used the Boyd dial number. So I think they might have messed that up. Okay, Chad sent Lori a series of text messages. In one of them, he says that, well, let me just open it up. The conversations between Lori and Chad started on the whatever iCloud account around July 13th. After the murder of Charles Vallow, Chad sent Lori a text in regards to a restraining order. Chad told Lori now he's talking about Brandon, he can't do that, just like he can't get a restraining order against you. The mediator would make that clear. You, and this was supposed to be Al, didn't have any charges against you. He would correct the text who didn't have. Chad then stated that he would talk with a person by the name of Allie, whoever, whose husband was a police officer. Chad would follow this text with telling Lori and Allie and her cop husband were dark, indicative of them not being able to be trusted. Chad then asked Lori if Brandon knew about Charles' text messages. Looking at additional messages, Chad was talking about the messages sent between Adam and Charles before his death. Screenshots of these messages were found on the whatever iCloud account. Further messages would indicate that the talk of the restraining order was in regard to Melanie and Brandon Boudreaux. Okay, then continuing to read through messages between Chad and Lori, she asked him to clear Melanie's new house of any bad spirits. Chad stated he was working on the house, but he was having to break down bad spirits that Brandon created. He also stated he was able to detect 3 listening devices in her new house, and he directed Lori to where they were. Then he sent Lori the following message: I am heading to bed so I can come snuggle tightly against you. I adore you. You are truly my best friend on earth and throughout eternity. See you in a minute. And then I mentioned this before, but whenever there are emojis, for most places in these police reports, they just come through as question marks. Every once in a while, the emojis come through. Okay. This was dated prior to Tammy Daybell's death, obviously. Okay, same day, Chad also expresses relief over Charles' death. Chad wrote to Zulema, "Hi Zulema, yes, I would be happy to give you a blessing, possibly this evening or tomorrow. It is crazy about Charles, but such a relief." So everyone's just expressing all this relief about Charles having been murdered. Zulema replies, "Thank you, Chad. I'm working until 8 p.m., but let me know when you're ready and I'll take a break at that time. Same thing, if tomorrow is better, I'm going to a farewell talk at 9 a.m. and then work at 12 p.m., but I can take a break whenever you're ready." Yes, the Charles thing feels surreal. Still, I think this was supposed to be processing that. Big relief that he's gone. Okay, a couple more and we'll call it a night. Kay and Larry flew into Phoenix to meet with Chandler Police. But they also called.
Extremely hard, and Kay is taking it home.
Okay, so, yeah. So this, I believe this audio has been edited because originally Kay was the one who called in, and because I remember this because she had said they didn't find out about that Charles was killed until July 13th. So we had a post that I had written in Cool Cats about, wait, how would she find out through a Google search on July 13th when we know that Cheryl Wheeler found out on the 12th? So anyway, there was like some muffled talking between Larry and Kay, and then the call dropped, and then Larry called back and talked to Detective Moffat. Anyway, so if anyone has the original audio for that, I would love to have it. All right, the 13th, Melanie Boudreau moves into a rental home in Chandler. Also, Adam and Brandon confront Melanie about her beliefs given Charles Vallow's death, and Melanie asks Lori if Tylee has a way to contact Brandon or Adam. So, 10:25, Adam just called Brandon. Okay, this is Melanie texting Lori. Adam just called Brandon and told him Al murdered Charles. He put it on speaker for me to hear. I mean, that was Melanie's thing. The Melanie texted again, "Can you talk, please?" Then Melanie texted again. "I think Brandon found out earlier. He seemed in shock a few hours ago." And then Adam and Brandon tried to use this situation to their advantage. "He cornered me and Adam put it on speaker to tell me. Then Brandon said, 'Do you still believe everything you believe?'" So I think what she was saying here was that Brandon put Adam on speaker, because on the 13th, this is the only point that Nicole and Zac were in agreement on, and I think also Adam, was that Adam and Zac were in Tucson on the 13th. So Adam would have been like on speaker and Brandon would have been the one holding the phone. Anyway, Melanie said, "Brandon is with the moving truck at my new address, moving things. I'm at the house with the kids." And then Lori just replies, "Call me." And then at 5:19, Melanie texts her again, "Does Tylee have a phone or a way to contact Brandon or Adam?" And Lori replied, "Nope, I still have it." So a couple notes. Brandon Boudreau's friend Jess said in an interview that Melanie was out of town at this time on that Saturday. So I wonder if she took off. I mean, it's just hard to say. There are so many contradictions. You can listen to that if you are so inclined. She just says that Melanie was out of town that Saturday. And then also, it appears Lori took Tylee's phone away for a couple of days, according to friends who went to visit her. So it says here, after the murder of Charles Vallow, and this was in the interview of one of Tylee's friends, redacted name, stated that Tylee stopped responding to her text messages and disappeared for a couple of days. This was unlike Tylee, so she went with another friend to check on Tylee. When they arrived, Lori was there and invited them in. She stated Lori was her bubbly self, as if nothing had happened. They went to Tylee's bedroom, and so-and-so, whoever was being interviewed, stated that Tylee was shaken up over Charles' death. She added that even though they did not get along, he was still a parental figure for her. This friend also stated that Tylee was sort of relieved that Charles was no longer around. This friend indicated that she had a strong relationship with Tylee. Oh, okay. That's the only detail there. So this friend reported that Tylee had, gone like kind of radio silent for a couple days. So they stopped by. There was one place in the FOIA docs, and I can't find the screenshot, where it said that the data on Tylee's phone was like empty or something like that. There was no data on Tylee's phone for a couple days following on Charles' murder. So I know some people were under the impression that like Lori just took away her phone for good. Apparently that wasn't the case, but it had to be very alarming to Tylee just to even have her phone taken away, just to make sure she didn't call police, reach out to someone. And this was very, very sketch. Okay. All right. And we will pick up at the 14th next week. Until then, have a great week.